In this video, we are going to be looking at the outliers effect on average. This can definitely impact development, can impact a lot of data analysis as well. So our problem statement in this case would be how one value, just one value in this case, can change average. And next week we're going to be looking at a similar example, except in this case it will be median. And we're not going to be looking at one value, but how values in general can affect median. But today we're going to be looking at just an outliers effect on average. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually create a dummy table. So we're going to create a table. We'll call this table dummy. And we're going to create a column called new val. And we're going to set this to big int. And then what we're going to do is we're going to insert into table dummy. And we're going to do values. And we're going to submit 500 of these one values. Now, I cannot execute these together, and the reason is if I were to run this and this at the same time, it would run the create statement, create table statement. What is it? 500 times. Sorry, grow 500. So that's one of the reasons why I can't do that. I'm going to copy and paste this, and then I'm going to insert the values 0. Okay. So if I were to now select average, I'm going to get 0.5. I will say, and this is just a development note here, if I'm selecting average, and let's say I do average new val, and I do from table dummy, it's actually going to return 0 in this case, and it's because of the fact that, it's because it's an int. And a big int, I'm sorry. And so it's going to say 0. So what I do to get it to be the decimal place, because we know that's not actually the average in this case, is I'm going to cast new vals as, and I'm going to be doing this for a reason this way, but I'm going to cast it as a decimal 22.2, and now when I do this, it will return 0.5. Another thing as well is if I copy and paste this, and just another development note here, and let's say let's see, where's the average? If I were to new vals, okay, if I were to cast this, it would be incorrect. So if I were to cast the average as decimal 22.2, and that's because of the order of operations if we think about it. Okay, so if I run this, we can just compare really fast. We'll see this is 0 and this is 0.5. That's because we're first of all casting this as a decimal, and then we're taking the average. In this case, we're casting everything as a decimal after we take the average. Well, the average is going to be 0 on a big int because it's not going to come out as a decimal. Okay, now taking that same scenario, we have this as a big int. Let's look at what happens if we insert a quadrillion. And for my own sake, I'm going to put in commas temporarily. And that's because a trillion is 12 zeros, so that's a trillion, but a quadrillion is 15 zeros. So even I have to count like that because it's not super easy. So we're going to insert a quadrillion into this table dummy, and then we're going to run the same exact statement here, and that is we are going to be looking at the average, and we'll see what happens. So there is a law in statistics. It's not an official law. In fact, I don't think they teach this in college, but it is things don't matter until they do. And this is a good illustration of that. Imagine that this is just, let's say, normal events, right? And it's on our bell curve, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, we have an event like this. It's like, what is it, that volcano that occurred in the Roman Empire or whatever? That would be like one of those events. The other thing I want to do here really fast is to show this on a standard deviation scale. I realized I made a mistake as I did this. So let me drop the table. I'm going to recreate it, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And this computer kind of sucks, so it does take a while to run some of these commands. Okay, I'm going to do just avg val, and then I'm going to take this same thing here. I can luckily just copy and paste it. And what I'm going to do is we are going to look at stdev, so the standard deviation. Okay, with that, and this time we're going to do stdev. So we see that we're going to get the, in this case, we're going to get the average, and then we're going to get the standard deviation. And again, we're going to get this value of 0.5 for the average. Makes sense. It actually makes sense. Standard deviation is 0.5, right? I mean, if you think about, the standard deviation being basically the square root of the variance. What the variance is going to be when we think about the average, right? And the fact that all these values are either 1 or 0. So yeah, that would be the square root of the variance. there. Now watch what happens when we go ahead and we insert this, this outlier value again to the average and the standard deviation here. Again, we know it's going to completely blow up the average, and we see, look at what it does to the standard deviation as well, right? And so that's what I mean where this is that illustration in statistics of things don't matter until they do. And so why does that matter in development? Well, it is one of those things where we just have to be aware of how an outlier could potentially affect our data, right? One outlier could significantly impact averages. So if we're running any type of data analysis or whatnot, that's pretty big. And then next week, we're going to be looking at some examples of where we might have some values that affect median.